Welcome, Vault Dwellers. My name is Nacho Bidness. So today we're looking at part 2 of my arena proof of concept. I call it proof of concept because it's not in any way complete. You can see the power system looks like it was made by a crazy person, and I mean, there's not even any place for people to sit and watch the fights. But it did prove out some ideas that I had about turning 2 carrots into a big pile of Deathclaw parts. So if you're interested in that, go watch part 1. In part 2, we're going to talk about this switch right here and how that works. So it can do a lot of crazy things and control a lot of stuff from just this one switch. So I'm not going to bother waiting for that fight to finish. I'm just going to kill everything in the room. And so how do we make that happen? Well, I have set up over here kind of a flat area for us to work in, so I can show how to build something like that. So the first thing that we're going to need here is 4 power counters. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you're not familiar with how these work, every time you add power to them, in other words, if you turn power off and then add power to them, they go up by 1. And when they show 0, they're transmitting power. So we're going to change that cycle count to 0 because we're just doing some on-off type stuff today. So we store all the wires and move these over here. Now, you cannot store these again after you have set them up. If you do, they will revert to the default. And I know that you don't necessarily have to hook them directly to the terminal, but that way it's more reliable. So the next thing we need is this delayed on switch. A delayed on switch, not the off switch, the on switch. And we hook up here and here, because we want those two to be opposite from the other ones. So we hit that, cycle once, and now when we add there, see that goes back to 0. And then this one here is a little different. I want this one to activate every other time I hit the switch, and so I'm going to wire it to that 3rd power counter there. So just hit the switch a couple of times here, and you can see things cycling through. And what I'm looking for is for it to say just that, 0, 1, 0, 1. That's my starting position. So to conceptualize this, we're going to build a few things that kind of represent what's going on in the arena. The first is this door, and the thing to remember about that door is when it gets power, it's open, and when a cage gets power, it's closed. So open door equals closed cage. The next things that we're going to need are over here in the cages tab. We got the quitting time beacon and the beta wave emitter. I'm going to go back over here in resources and get the siren. And we're putting the beta wave emitter on its own circuit because we want that to turn on when the cages are first opened and then turn off later. And the reason for that is that it can be somewhat glitchy, and we want the settlers not to recognize the creatures as hostile if possible, but we definitely don't want the turrets to recognize the creatures as hostile. And you can see that I've also built a spotlight there because that was something else that we had going on in the arena. And one thing that you will notice is that I go ahead and turn those switches on so that when I apply power from my counter over there, they'll already be on and I don't have to run over and switch them on. One thing that we can do here is, you hear how that just rings once, right? And we can turn it off and we can turn it on again and it will ring once. Or, if we're clever, we can make it ring continuously or almost continuously. So what we do to make that happen is we go over here and get an interval switch. And this is another one that doesn't necessarily have to go straight to the terminal, but it's more reliable. We come down here to the interval switch control and we set the on time to 2 seconds, and then we'll set the off time to 1 second. And since that keeps blinking the power to the quitting time beacon, we can have the quitting time beacon more or less sounding continuously. So we put a wire right there. So we're going to go from the counter to each of these things, and I do that because it's easy to accidentally grab the wrong counter and then be tearing at your hair trying to figure out why nothing is working the way that you think it should. So, and we need to, come on, need to get one more for, there we go, for the siren there. So this little group is everything that's going on inside the arena. The next thing that we had was a bunch of turrets. I want to leave those on most of the time because they add to the settlement defense value. Now, they're not on an outside wall, they don't contribute when a raid happens or anything, but since the likelihood of raids and settler happiness is based on having those things on, I just want to leave them on as much as possible. However, I do want to turn it off when the cage door opens, or in this case, that door closes. Reason being, the beta wave transmitter can be somewhat glitchy. And if we don't turn the turrets off, they will just immediately murder everything that just came out of the cages. So the last group here is the traps, and I'm going to set a flamethrower trap, but I'm also going to set this guy because the first time I activate that flamethrower trap, I'll need to repair it. I'm hoping that changes at some point with a mod. So we just go ahead and wire these two up. There we go. So, got a big complicated system here, and we hit the switch one time, the door opens, beta wave transmitter turns on, turrets turn off just in case, and we've got alarms and sirens and spotlights. And after we're done watching the fight, we hit the switch again, the traps activate, the beta wave transmitter turns off, which means the turrets will definitely recognize the creatures as hostile and start shooting. And the traps don't do very much except look cool. So, I think it's a legitimate question to ask, why in the world would you bother setting up something like this that's so complicated when you could just run all of these circuits with just, 4 wall-mounted switches? And the reason is twofold. One, I wanted to set myself the challenge of doing this, of having just a kill switch. And two, I don't want my final arena to have all these hanging wires and crap everywhere. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remote control everything. I'm gonna put all these power counters and everything in a control room, in a generator room, somewhere else out of the way. And the only thing that's gonna be in my Emperor seat or my VIP box or whatever we're gonna decide it is just gonna be that one switch, which I can glitch into a wall using the rug glitch. So how do we make that happen? Well, let's take a look at something else that I set up. You can see I've got these these delayed on switches all set up in this chain, coming all the way up this hill and back down the hill over here. And when we hook up this final thing here, it's like the switch just got pushed. Now, it also means that we blink the power in the whole circuit if we come push this switch over here. You see there how that changed? So, it means that from anywhere we can control this stuff. Now the delay is longer the farther you are from, the more switches you have between you and your power counters. So there we go. That's how to control a whole set of complicated things with just one switch. Now there's one other application for this that I used at my Murkwater site. In fact, that's what inspired me to come up with this in the first place. I built that place before fusion generators came out. And I didn't have as much space as I wanted, so I needed to be power efficient so that I could have lots of turrets when I needed them, and lots of water purifiers the rest of the time, and also be able to turn all the lights on and off so that I'd be able to easily record a video about the cannibal's den in the basement. Spoiler alert, by the way. So, we can use this to do similar things with other systems. Now, I will warn you that this can be glitchy when it comes to light bulbs and other lights that are not hardwired in. If you're not careful with the placement on those, they can sometimes take power from a pylon that you didn't want and bleed that power into a circuit that you don't want it in. So you'd be running along building your settlement, place one light bulb, and the whole thing comes crashing down. So I recommend saving often and testing often, and really pretty much just sticking to lights that you hardwire in. I know that this one was maybe a complicated tutorial. I don't know. I found it hard to figure this out. So if you have questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked, click the like button If you want to see more crazy contraptions, hit the subscribe button. If you didn't like, please tell me why. I'll try to do better next time. My name is Nacho Bidness, saying it's a great big wasteland out there. Let's go have fun in it.